First thing we need to learn about is a concept called version control. Has everybody heard of GitHub? Has everybody heard of a concept called Git? Sam, is this new for you? Kind of?
A little new, but I'm a fast learner, so you can jump
Okay.
in. I'll catch
Okay,
up.
cool. So, good news, Claude Code handles almost everything almost perfectly as far as GitHub goes and version control goes. But it's kind of important to understand just like rudimentary, like what GitHub is, what Git is, what version control is. So, whenever you're working either by yourself or with a team, it's really easy to make mistakes. And there are times when mistakes can be catastrophic. And having something called version control in place where you can iteratively work through a project and have the ability to roll back if necessary is critically important because shit goes wrong, shit goes sideways. And with Claude Code, uh, as you get working, there's this concept called the context window. And currently you have up to 200,000 tokens in order to code stuff. And they just launched something which is like a million token window, but it's only available in beta. It's also, there's a lot of like, I'm already seeing lots of discussions about how useful that additional context window size is. But as you work, you get to this point where if you don't uh, do something called compaction, where your context window gets kind of squeezed down, and what Claude thinks is important to carry on to the next conversation, if you don't, when you get to that compaction point, you no longer have rollback automatically inside Claude Code to what happened before the compaction. And so it's really important to have version control that's outside of Claude Code. And the tool that we lean into to do that is something called GitHub. And the underlying technology of that is Git. Um, I generally use a flow, which is something called that GitHub uses, which is called GitHub Flow, and it's super easy. In general, when we're working on something, there's like a main trunk or branch uh, of code that we're working on, and as we work on something new, we'll work in what's called a feature branch, and then you work in that feature branch, and then when you're done, you merge that when it's perfect, you merge that back into the main branch. That's like very high level. Sean or Robin, if you want to make everybody smarter, I know I'm missing stuff and I'm not doing a great job explaining it, but that's kind of like the basic underlying concept. So what does that mean? That means that we have to make sure that we're connected to GitHub. It means that we have to have a GitHub account. It means that you can connect to it in two different ways, which is either through an HTTPS, like a secure HTTPS connection, or via SSH. And I have found that both approaches make sense in different situations. For example, like a lot of times I have like 8 different GitHub user accounts that I have access to, and it's a pain in the ass to connect to them via SSH oftentimes. And if I'm stupid and I need to, and someone can help me get smarter at that, I'd love help. But I've found that oftentimes I need to do the secure method to connect. Um, so that's super high level. I'm hoping that someone else wants to jump in and make everybody else smarter about this. I'm not necessarily the lead instructor for this or even an instructor. It's just I figured we should get together and do this, do
Oh,
this together. And I do want to read the chats real quickly. Oh, and we all need to know how to raise our hands. Can everybody see at the bottom of their Zoom thing the reaction, the heart thing? If you click that, you'll see the hand raising, I believe, in that little pop-up. So if you have questions, feel free to raise your hand. Robin, I see your hands up.
So I was just going to say, I don't know if everybody knows why you need version control.
Yeah.
And so it seems like a kind of obvious thing in a way, but like if you think of I know I've got a book here on my desk, and this book was probably created through hundreds of iterations. So somebody typed out on a typewriter a page, and then they typed another page, and then they went back and scribbled things all over it and edited it, and eventually we got a book at the end. But it's lots and lots of different iterations. And what version control does is it allows us to kind of roll back through those different iterations to see the different versions of in this case, a piece of code, but here it could be a book. And what's useful about that is when you are building complicated systems and simple systems, then often things go wrong. And you want to know, how can I get back to something that didn't go wrong? And how can I find out what caused all these things to go wrong? And so each iteration, each step in this flow of building this very complicated thing from simple things is you want to be able to kind of work out what side effects it had, what errors it caused, what other problems it caused, apart from adding the functionality you wanted to add. So that's why version control is useful. And so the reason we talk about a trunk or branches, these kind of things, the visual metaphor is that there's some very simple seed that you start with, and then each update that you have, which we would call a pull request, each update basically moves you forward, often down a branch. And at some point, you take the branch and stick all the big branches back into the trunk, which is, I think, where the tree metaphor fails miserably. But you have lots of different iterations happening on different branches. So that's kind of, maybe I've just confused everybody even more than before. But that's kind of why. And it's also a good way of thinking about when you want to build something complex, you actually want to build it in as few simple steps as you can. And so at least when I started off building things, I just tried to build the whole thing, and then it wouldn't work. And I'd try and debug it, and it still wouldn't work, and I'd throw the whole thing away. The advantage of doing it step by step is that you can find things that work, and then build some functionality that works, and then build something on top of that, and extend that. Yeah, so that's kind of why do I need version control? And often if you get Claude to build something massive, it just, as Noah says, it runs out of context, or it doesn't run out of context, but the first iteration doesn't work. And then it tries to edit that or tweak it or debug that, and that just makes even bigger messes. Often what you see is that the models that are less intelligent, the less smart models, they make bigger changes. So for instance, one of their changes might be, I'll just delete all the code. And then what do I do? Oh dear, I deleted all the code. What do I do next? Right. And so it's useful to be able to roll back and roll forward. Okay. That was
Awesome.
that bit.
Okay. Let's maybe jump in a little bit, and then you'll kind of see how at least how I work. Everybody has different workflows, but I always use an IDE called VSCode. It's made by Microsoft. It's free. It works on every platform. It's awesome. You can set up your workspace to look any way you want. If anybody wants their workspace to work like mine, let me know, and I'll do something called exporting my settings. And then you can open up your own VS Code and import settings, and it'll pull in all the plugins that I have and the colors and all the stuff in the junk. And I did the same thing with a guy named John Murch. I remember logging in, we were doing a screen share, and he was showing me how to do something. And I was like, ooh, I love those colors. And, he's like, here are my settings, bro. Okay. So how does this all work? This is not like Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop, where you have a beautiful user interface. We're doing almost everything from the command line. What's crazy powerful about Claude Code and why it's useful outside of coding work is that it allows you to work on your local machine, and you can use it in the web interface as well. But what's amazing is that you can tie it to your file system. And the way that I get going is I'll say like file, new window, and it'll open up a new window like this. and then I'll say File, Open Folder. And I keep almost all my projects in a folder called GitHub. And then I create a new folder in there, and I just made one called Class, and I hit Open. And now I have a root. I have got like all of our project files are going to live inside this class folder. Over here on the right, there are all these different ways of opening up stuff or panels inside of VS Code. The bottom one here opens up Terminal. Terminal is going to look super scary at first, but just kind of let it ride. And to get started with Claude Code, we type in the word Claude, hit enter, and then it's like, hey, do you trust this folder? Yes, I trust the folder. And the first thing that you see is this dealio right here. And it'll say like what version of Claude Code is currently running. And if you use this thing all the time, you're going to see these numbers are going up sometimes multiple times a day. Like they're just constantly making it better. So one of the things that I do almost every time I log in is I check the release notes to see what's new. You don't need to do that, but it's helpful because they'll launch new features that might be like they'll have a feature, it'll work a specific way, and then they might revert it or they might upgrade how it works. After I
Wait, no,
read
how did you do that?
these things, and this is a foundational Claude Code concept called slash commands. So you type a forward slash, and then I type the word R, E, and then I start to see release notes, REL, and then I hit enter. See how blue is on release notes? That tells me what will be auto completed if I hit tab. Or if I hit enter, it'll both auto accept it and submit that like this. And then it shows release notes again. There's something that's really important, and it's that concept of the context. I was watching a really great video the other day where they explained the concept of how LLMs are smart and dumb. And basically the concept is the more of your context window that gets used up, the dumber the model is. And so you want to aggressively manage your context with two different moves. One is the clear move, and the other is the exit. And what that does is it actually ends your session. And that's what I just did there. So if you do that, what I'll often do is if I want to manage context, I might, after I've exited, I can then hit the trash can and it gets rid of my terminal. At that point, I can hit this again and I can type in Claude and it gets me rolling. One thing that I actually learned just this week is I love putting my terminal up here. I forget how to do the terminal location. I might have to do it like this. I forget how to move it, but I'll get that by next time. And I like to have it in the right-hand column. And the reason why is your terminal, like almost all of the work that we're doing is inside our terminal, versus inside our normal IDE. Okay, so this is basically a hello world kind of party that we're doing right now. So we're going to connect. And what user is this? I need to just shift this to another user. I need to share it. Test. It doesn't matter what I name it, right? SEO is an editor. And then I need to just give me 1 second. I'm dealing with some good old BS. Transfer ownership. I'm making SEO the owner of this. And the reason why is that when I open AppScript, I want it to not throw an error. And you'll see what I mean in a second. Okay, here we go. So Google Sheets and Google Docs and Google Forms and all those different Google products have this scripting language called AppScript that's tied to them. And as we're getting started with this concept of like building software, and this is what I was going to tell you all about, which is great. I'm going to switch back to the other user. I knew this was going to happen. Sometimes if you're not using your primary user, it like won't let you into AppScript. So just bear with me for a second. Okay, so this is our app script project, and I'm going to connect to it from my local IDE. And what's rad about that is I get to use my local IDE for building, and then I can push stuff up into this. And the way that we do it is we grab this ID, which is right here, and this is the app script project ID. That's going to allow me to connect my local machine to this. And then I can come back to Claude. And actually, first I need to connect this to a specific cloud project. And I need to do that. I have to grab a project name. Okay. And the reason I'm doing this is to make sure that I have the proper APIs connected to it. Okay. So now I get to actually talk to Claude. And when we talk with Claude, you can use natural language. Hey, I'm just chatting with this thing. I use a really cool tool that I recommend that you all go pay for, which is called Whisper Flow, WISPR Flow, and it allows you to dictate. And it's amazing. I don't know if you've used all these dictation tools, but they always mess up acronyms like SEO and they turn it into S, the letter C, then O. Whisper is amazing. I want to create a clasp connection between our local project and an app script project with an ID of, and I have to copy this again. And I'm going to be kind of lame with how I prompt, um, because I want you to see how good this thing is, even when you're bad. I want this script to allow me to connect to any Google Search Console property that is connected to the user's email address and to download the last 30 days of clicks, impressions, CTR, and average position aggregated at the query level. And I'm going to teach you guys an amazing, when you're typing into a terminal, it's really confusing. How do I get to the next line? If I hit shift return on a Mac, it's going to throw these weird slashes in. If you hit the option enter, it'll just do a new line. If you hit enter, it'll submit the prompt. So you want to make sure that you're hitting new lines. Ready? Ask me anything. Basically, what this enables us to do, I want to make sure that I'm removing any kind of questions from the process. I want to align with the model and I want it to have full clarity about what we're trying to accomplish. And it throws us into this mode where we establish the scope of what we're building together. And anytime you're doing any of this stuff, you do not need to be a builder. Like, you do not need to be a coding expert. But what you do need to be is curious. And anytime you don't know the answer, you then become the you need to demand from Claude to make you. If you haven't met me before, guys, my favorite three words are make me smarter. And anytime I don't know something, that's the first thing I say to the other person or Claude. It's going to throw gibberish and jargon at you at times, and you're not going to know what the hell that is. Ask for clarity. Hey, explain this to me like I'm five. Okay. So it's asking me questions. How should the data be output? Google Sheets, CSV, download, or something else? And I want it in Google Sheets. How should the user select which Google Search Console property to pull data from? A sidebar UI, a sheet cell input, custom menu dialog, or type something, right? So I personally know, because I've built a lot of stuff in AppScript, that if we do a custom sidebar, it's going to take us a lot longer to get something built. So I'm going to say a sheet cell input because I know that's going to be a lot faster. And it's saying like, hey, there's a row limit. There's a row limit to getting data from Search Console. And it's saying that there's a 25,000 row per page limit. I know that when I'm making API requests from Google Search Console, that there's 25,000 rows, but that's not all the data, right? And our goal is not to get a little piece. We want it all. So yeah, duh, we want all rows, dude. And then it says, do you already have clasp installed globally and authenticated with your Google account? Yes, ready to go. No need setup help. Type something else. I'm going to type something else. Let's check. I actually know that I have class set up, but whatever. It then shows me my answers, and I'm going to hit submit answers, and it's going to start doing stuff. And the first thing you're going to notice probably is I'm going to pull this way up here so we can see everything. Can you guys read my screen? Is it too small? Okay. Uh, it's going to have really funny verbs here. Symbioting, jogging, mishmashing. It's funny. You're going to see this stuff happen. It's then going to ask you to do stuff. And what you'll notice is it generally is going to frame its questions in 2 or 3 different ways. It's like, should I do X? Yes or no? Or should I do X? Yes and no. And then the third, which I love, is yes and don't ask again for clasp commands inside this project. And these are helpful because it means that we'll never have to answer that prompt again, which is great. So I'm going to go yes. And then notice what happened. It created what's called a Claude folder, and it creates a local settings file, which is really important. And you'll notice here that it says it's starting to compile the things that it's allowed to do and the things that it's not allowed to do by default. So yes, you could totally like download someone else's permissions file and just slop it into this. And as we're doing this, there's like 3 different things that are important, which is to understand like how Claude settings work inside your computer. There's basically there's multiple levels. There's inside a project folder, you'll see a Claude folder like this inside of a project folder. And then there's also like having it set up at your computer level. I thought there was a third layer though. There's a third one, isn't there? What am I missing? No, there's just 2. Okay. So basically you can set your permissions for the user or for the project. It's like global settings or project level settings. Okay. And then and they cascade. And they cascade in a way that like the system settings are X, and then the stuff that's inside your project overrides what's at your system settings. And I personally like to set a lot of stuff inside the setting system, and we'll go over how to do that later. Let's see. So now this is awesome. Do you see how it says web search, Google App Script, Search Console API, Advanced Service, AppScript.json configuration 2025, 2026. There's a lot of information there. This is a key thing about Claude Code. It uses things called tools, and we can see a whole bunch of them here. There's the bash tool, and that's like typing into the command line. There's also a plan tool, and this is super, super powerful. Like Claude Code is entering something called planning mode, and it'll start to create like a plan of attack to build the thing. And then we could see web search. So Claude Code can actually go perform web searches. And there's some really interesting stuff in this actual search because I know that it's going to take us down the wrong path. If you look here, it says Google Search Console API Advanced Service. I just so happen to know that with Google Apps Script, there are built-in services and advanced services. And I know that Search Console API is not an advanced service that's available. When you see stuff like that, that could be like one of those moments where you think to yourself, ooh, I wonder if that's a thing that exists. You don't necessarily have to remember any of this, but like that's just something that I know is going to be problematic. I know that GSC is not an advanced service that's available. Okay. All right. So now it's saying like, hey, can I go get these docs and can I get these docs and can I get these docs and yada yada? Yes. 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 Now notice this. This is where it's active. And then this is where my prompt was. Did you see that my prompt was below the active level? And you can also see this one thing here that says Control plus B to run in background. It took me a long time to learn how to do that. I just never tried it until like 3 weeks ago. I'm kind of laughing at myself, but it's super useful because it like that thing that I typed was below where Claude was doing stuff. And if I want my prompt to immediately be acted upon, I can hit Control B and the other thing will go into a background task and then it'll process the thing that I'm telling it to do. Hopefully that makes sense. How are we doing so far? Is this good for everybody? Okay. And for our more advanced Claude Code users, is there anything that you feel like I kind of really, oh, check this out. This is amazing. It says developers.google.com webmaster tools. It wants to go get the API docs. As we get going, there are things called MCPs, and one of the MCPs that you probably want to install on your computer is called Context 7, and you can go find that. Context 7 is pretty rad because it allows you to basically see the real-time API docs for almost every API that I think is in GitHub, and other sources too. And so you don't have to worry about like, hey, is it an advanced service or not? If you point it towards context 7, it'll make sure that you use it. And I'm looking at the time here. So it's still in planning mode and it's doing stuff and it's looking up all these API docs and I'm basically allowing it to go get stuff. And it still hasn't even acted on my thing. So I'm going to hit Control B, and now my prompt is above its flambeing, which is awesome. Oh, good catch, Noah. That changes the approach. Since it's not an advanced service, we'll need to use URL fetch app. Thanks, jerks. And it says with OAuth 2 to call the Google Search Console API directly. So now it's like modifying the plan. I actually thought we'd have this built in 40 minutes, believe it or not. So a lot of this is like, hey, we're waiting, right? We're gonna start thinking about how to like do multiple things at a time in another session. But what we're gonna get to is a place where you're gonna potentially have multiple things happening at the same time. And those could be sub agents, they can be agents, they can be all kinds of stuff. This is kind of like the root file of our directory. I mean, the root file of our project. And if you've never coded, it's very easy to create a massive shit show that is completely unmanageable. Like you want to make sure that the root, pretty much all the folders in your application, if you're building an app, uh, stay clean because it's going to be very difficult to find stuff. And we're going to create things called rules and other stuff that help us keep I'm just reading this stuff with permissions. I have enough context to write this plan. Let me incorporate your correction, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so it's almost done with our plan. And we're going to have time to preview the plan. Believe it or not, everybody, the actual building of this is going to be super fast. Like there's not a lot of methods that it needs to do. And then this is really, really useful. And it's really useful because you get to see how Claude thinks, and it also helps you understand how to talk to it better. I mean, that's what I've taken away from it, where it'll say, here's Claude's plan, context. We need to connect to local, that's my folder, project to an existing Google app script project, which is that Google sheet, using class, then build a script that builds the last 30 days of Search Console. Key constraint. And it identifies the fact that it's not a service. It then describes the file structure, blah, blah, blah. And it says, do you want to do this? Okay, this is really important. I'm going to just hit enter and let it roll, but that's the exact wrong way to approach most things. Like, think of it this way. At the beginning of a journey, I'm going off into the distant place, and I decide to go left at my first possible left instead of going straight. And I know that my journey is 2,000 miles. That first fork probably has that left-hand turn could have a huge impact on everything that happens after that, right? It's the same thing here at the plan phase. You really want to spend time reading through the plan to make sure that it all makes sense so that you don't waste tokens later fixing the plan and fixing the execution. And reading through plans, this is not a late night activity when you're about to fall asleep. This is a you being focused and really paying attention. And doing all of this stuff is not a, like I'm about to fall asleep activity, because every single decision you make impacts everything that happens after that. And it gets to be both expensive, depending on how you're paying for all this stuff, and problematic. So I'm just going to hit yes, clear context, and auto accept edits. And I'm going to delete that. And then it's going to build stuff step by step. And then I think what we're going to do now is shift gears, and I'm going to let it just build itself, build all this stuff in the background. And after we do our feature Friday, we'll come back and look at it. I'm not going to build anything. I'm not going to make any decisions with it. If it asks me for stuff, I'm going to wait until after so that you guys can kind of like pick it right back up from where we started. And if you guys want to sit with me, we'll finish it in 20 minutes when we're done. And that, my friends, is our first session. How do we do? Is that a good start?
Very nice. Very nice.
Okay, cool. Oh, you guys see how it's already building? It's already crossing stuff off the list. Okay, cool. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. And in the background, I just checked to see, and I know that it's not working perfectly. And that's just kind of par for the course a lot of times. So it has pushed code up here, and there are things called hooks, which we're going to get into later, and skills. And one hook that I love, and basically a hook is something that allows you to tie in to basically any part of the life cycle of building code inside Claude Code. So like, remember we looked at these things called tools? Well, there are pre-tool use and post-tool use, and we used a tool to generate all this code. Does it work? Is it any good? Who knows? So you can create a hook to be a code reviewer. So every time you produce code, you can have this thing go and automatically check your code for you. I don't have that hook here for this, so I'm just going to give it a prompt. Please review code to make sure someone non-technical could get this to work without hassles. And I know that there's some stuff that's wrong with it, so I'm going to see what it does. And I got a new verb. We're harmonizing, and it's saying, let me reread all the files with fresh eyes, thinking about what a non-technical user would experience. So for anybody who's brand new, that's a nice little prompt. And there are some others that are really great too. There's all kinds of like great nudges to get Claude to be smarter. One of them could be like, pretend it's a year from now. Look back with hindsight 2020, asking yourself, if we'd only built, what would we have added? Now implement that elegant and use the word elegant solution now, and it'll go and fix stuff. Okay, critical bug. Fetch query data is defined in both code.js and search console.js. Ooh, so it defined problems and then it just started fixing them. AppScript shares a single global namespace across all files. These will collide and the script will break silently. Yeah, we don't want that. They'll think it's frozen, no progress. So it's fixing stuff and then it's going to push it up live. Now improve the settings sheet to give better instructions. Now it's adding more stuff. And I also noticed before that it asked for dates. What about start and end dates? Shouldn't that, I want to teach you notice my first sentence is above the philosophizing, and my second one, which is also important, is now bumped above. But there are times where it'll start on one thing and I want it to take both things into context. I can hit the escape key, and that's top left on your keyboard. That is a critical thing to learn because when it starts going down a path and it's like wasting tokens, you want to stop it right away because it just costs you money and tokens. And I want to show you how to have a handle on how much all of this stuff costs or how much of your plan you're using /usage. I know that the week just turned over for how my billing works, and it's going to show us a couple bar charts in a minute. After it does this class push, it's going to address my usage question, which will take just a second. Okay, what's new? Oh, goody. So it's now updated some stuff. So if I go here and I go to the settings sheet and I reload it, let's see here. Hold on a second. The default 30 days. The settings sheet now has 3 columns. I only see 1 column. Regarding usage, that's a built-in, not something you can run it directly. I wanted to show you all this. Okay, there we go. All right. So my week turns over in an hour, and I've been coding really aggressively all week on the $200 max plan. And there's 3 different plans. There's a $20 plan, there's a $100 plan, and there's a $200 plan. The brand new model that just got released yesterday, which is called Opus 4.6, apparently is using a lot more tokens than Opus 0.45. And we can see that I still have 25% left in my particular plan after working pretty much 7 days a week, all day. So what plan do you need? You can start with the $20 plan, see where it gets you. You'll probably end up shifting up to the $100 plan pretty quickly and then making decisions about if you want to go to the next extreme. But keep in mind, if I have this thing running, it's going to save probably 15 to 20 hours of work per month. And if you think about what a developer costs, which is whatever, $100 to $300 an hour, you're going to find huge budget savings in paying that $200 a month. This was like the easiest budget I ever had to ask for my boss. Because I'm like a 1-person team and told her that I thought I was going to be able to build things twice as fast. Some things that's the case, some things not. Okay, so I want to exit out of that really quickly. The values are not in the settings sheet now. And you can see that I mistyped stuff on purpose. And I wanted to do that so that you could see how forgiving it is with spelling mistakes. And I'm going to go back in previous version, already created the settings sheet with properties URL and A1. The function get value pushing files. So do you see this where it says bash clasp push? That's a built-in clasp method where it's pushing the files up to my sheet. And this is how good it is when we're talking about, hey, how does version control work and all that other stuff? We're going to use version control in a minute. Okay, so now we're going to go back up to our sheet. We're going to reload it and see if it puts stuff here. We're going to see the custom app menu. And if I hit the list properties, I'm kind of hiding all of this stuff so you guys don't see client data, but like basically there's 153 Search Console properties that got pulled into my sheet when I hit the list my properties method. And each row there shows the permission level, whether it's a site owner or it's a whatever. And then if I go back and I hit this fetch query data, it should pull in all of the data into a query data sheet, which has not been made yet. So we're going to see a new tab get written, and then it pulled in all of my data. Now, this is reminiscent of Search Console, right? But watch this. We're about to hit Search Console limits, which is right there, 1,000 rows, right? Now look where my mouse is. I just built a tool that let me see roughly 20 times as much data about my own website than what I can see in Search Console. And I did it in an hour without really knowing what I was doing. I knew some stuff about how Search Console worked as an API, and I knew some stuff about AppScript. Actually, I know a lot about it, but it's like uh you guys can be dangerous pretty quickly is the point of view. You watched how I didn't really give it tons of advice and counsel as we were going. I gave it some, but I didn't really give it a lot. When you look at this, you're going to then have inferences for like what you like and what you don't like about this tool. And you're going to start to create ways that you can fix it. And you're going to pull those in and tell Claude how to do it differently, right? Um, should I look at the chat? I'm watching Adrian laughing. Am I missing stuff that's important? Okay, cool. So that's a pretty quick thing. So let's get into version control real quick, just so you can see how it all ties together. I want to save this using git/github to have version control. I'm going to make it bigger. So watch it doing things in the background. It's running a command line. It's saying git status, trying to understand, hey, are we logged in? And then it's trying another tool, which is GitHub auth status. And it's trying to see, hey, are we logged in or not? And then now it found the right one that it wanted to run, which is this one. And it's saying, do you want to proceed? And I have a choice of yes or no, or the yes, which is don't ask for permission in the future. And it's saying, hey, yeah, we're logged in. Sweet. You're authenticated as Sterling Sky. Before where'd it go? Oh, I lost it. But that's cool. Should this be public or private? And I'm going to go public because there's no API keys or anything like that in there. Although, actually, no, I'm going to go private because I don't know if that spreadsheet ID is going to be inside the clasp, or if that's going to get hidden by something. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. Let's call it class. Submit my answers. And we're going to start to see new stuff getting built over here on the left besides Claude. I thought I was going to see Git stuff. Oh, there it is. Okay. So it's now asking, this is actually really important. You see how it says Git init? This is how that one command is important to learn. Git init means, hey, let's start doing version control in this folder. So, and when you're using Claude Code, there's something that I found that's super effing annoying, and the effing is warranted here. I think I'm clicking yes, and I hit enter, 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 and nothing happens, and it'll auto select files over here in my file explorer. The fix to that is click above the bash command line up here. And then when I go like this, I can see that it's allowing me to do stuff in the terminal again. So I'm going to say yes. And then it's going to create Git inside this folder. I should add a git ignore file, which we're going to see here. And it's going to tell us what stuff is ignored. And it's going to ignore everything that's inside the Claude folder currently. And then it says git, what's the status? Show the working tree status. I go yes. We made a repo up in, I don't know that we pushed it up into GitHub yet, but we're making a repo called class. And then it's saying show the staged and unstaged changes. Yes, we want to do that. Staged and unstaged. There's three basic, not three, but there's a couple basic commands. Git add, which is, hey, add these to stuff that we want to track. Track the files is like git add. Git commit is, hey, I've made changes and I want you to actually save the changes to what's being tracked. And then now you can see here it's creating an actual repo. GH is the command line for GitHub, and it says repo create, and it's creating a repo named class. And then it has that dash dash private, which means no one else in the world other than Sterling Sky is going to be able to see it. This is the source for it. And then push means push the code from my computer up to GitHub, hit enter. And then if I switch over to my GitHub account, we're going to see that repo getting pushed up there. And I'm in Sterling Sky, and up here in the top right, I go repositories. And then we can see class. We can see that it's private, and I can click into it. And then now I can see all my files. And the thing that's really cool about this is that when Claude creates these comments, they're awesome. They're very detailed and they're very easy for Claude to search through. So that if you're trying to have it understand history of what you're working on, it makes it really easy for it to kind of go through your repo. Okay, cool. So done. Your repo is live at GitHub Sterling Sky /class. Initial commit has all 6 files pushed to main. So what did we build? We opened up our editor. We created a new folder. We opened the terminal. We opened up Claude Code. We talked at it. We had this idea that we wanted to get Search Console data in a Google Sheet. We connected that Google Sheet to our local thing with Clasp. It planned all this stuff out. It then executed the code, and that execution took 2 minutes while Owen was starting to talk. And then we had to go back and forth a little bit with iterations to clean it up. We then pushed it live, and then we created a repo so that we would have version control. And what's great about that is if my computer shits the bed right now, that code is still saved up in GitHub. And it means that someone else that I'm working with can go grab that code and pull it down to their computer to work on it, which is amazing. And then we pushed our code up to GitHub, and that I think is a fantastic place to talk about it. Questions, comments, feedback.